Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is Daily Drop number 334. It looks like, according to a new article by the Telegraph today, that Barclays is ready to stand behind Jess Staley. Now, that is what they're saying publicly, of course. And with the third quarter earnings report getting ready to drop, you would think that they would be saying something like that. You see, the last thing they want right now is instability at the top. And if the shareholders think that there's some stability at the top of the organization, then they're going to have a lot more confidence in the institution, financially speaking. Now, they're making this statement, and we have not even seen what the regulator's report has to say yet. So, in my opinion, I believe that this is just another statement by Barclays to try and make sure that things stay calm during the COVID pandemic. The last thing they want is chaos at the top. So they're going to ride Staley as long as they can during this pandemic. There's no doubt about that. But when this report drops and all the information starts to flow out, Barclays' hand is going to be forced and Bramson is going to get his wish. The question is, when will that occur? Let's jump into this article by City AM and see what's what. Headline, Jess Staley set to stay on at Barclays for 2 more years. So there's no author of the article, so I'm guessing it's the City AM staff who wrote it. Jess Staley is reportedly set to stay on as chief executive of Barclays, despite the lender coming under pressure to replace the controversial American. Oh, and that's just public pressure for now. Just wait until this report drops. Just wait till more information comes out about how close these two really were. Nobody's really digging into this story yet. None of these outlets are digging in. We have a lot of financial outlets that are digging a little bit, but I'm talking about the serious, so-called serious journalistic outlets. Where's the New York Times with a huge expose? Where's the Washington Post? Nowhere to be seen, nowhere to be found. Busy playing grab ass still. And meanwhile, Jess Staley, Jeffrey Epstein's good buddy, is not receiving the sort of spotlight he should be. The bank is not expected to announce any succession plans when it reports third quarter earnings on Friday, despite activist investor Edward Bramson recently renewing his attack on Staley, the Telegraph reported. And remember, it's not what they say to you, it's what they don't say to you. The whole situation here is they have the third quarter report coming out, right? So they don't want to tarnish it with any bad news. They don't want to ruin their third quarter report by talking about succession. But from everything I have been told, from all of the people I have spoken to who work in the financial sector, Jess Staley is not being supported behind the scenes the way they're supporting him publicly. And a lot of people understand this, the extreme damage this relationship with Jeffrey Epstein is going to cause when it really comes out. See, we've only scratched the surface of his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein so far. We've talked about a few of his business dealings with Epstein, his personal relationship with Epstein, and stuff like that. But the regulatory committee that's looking into his managing of Epstein's money, et cetera, well, they're going to be privy to a lot more documents and information that we do not have access to. It emerged earlier this year that Staley was facing a regulatory investigation over his descriptions of his relationship with convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein, prompting speculation that the chief executive could step aside early. And I think it's a little bit more than speculation. I think that at this point, we have to understand what's going on here. We have to understand that there is politics being played within the organization. And again, remember, I know I keep talking about it, but the number one thing to these people is earnings. So if they believe that Jess Staley, even though he had an unreported, deeper relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, if they believe that he can continue to steer the ship right now, these people don't have any moral compass. They don't care. They want to increase their wealth. And unless something really comes down the pipe on Jess Staley, well, they're going to hold their cards as close to their chest as possible right now, and in hopes that this blows over and they can continue on their merry way. But unfortunately for them, not getting out ahead of this is going to come back and bite them in the ass. When the information comes out, when the trial starts, when mouths start moving and tongues start wagging, we'll find out the real story about Jess Staley and Jeffrey Epstein. And then Barclays is going to have to deal with that fallout on top of the fallout right now, because they're not being proactive enough here. They're putting profits over the image of the company and over what is right. And that's just how the financial sector works. We've talked about it a bunch lately. And just there's examples of it every single time you read an article about one of these banks, about one of these situations. You understand very quickly that all that matters is the almighty dollar, the consolidation of wealth and power, and keeping their whatever situation they have going on, keeping that moving smoothly while crushing everybody else below them. While Bramson's investment vehicle, Sherborne, called for Staley to step down over his links with Epstein, shareholder voting advisor ISS and Glass Lewis have both recommended that he be elected. Yeah, of course they did, because their money depends on him, right? They're connected with Jess Staley financially, and they understand that if they remove Staley right now from Barclays, amidst all of this fallout of Jeffrey Epstein and the connections with Epstein and Staley, that it is going to crush their earnings report. So they're trying to ride it out, in my opinion. They're going to try and ride this out, try and, skate down the back of this pandemic for as long as possible before removing Staley. But remember what we talked about recently, how Barclays reshuffled at the top, moved two other folks into very high positions as successors to Jess Staley. You don't do that if you think this guy's going to be around for 2 years, okay? This is a stabilization move. This is a bit of staunching the blood of the wound of the conversation of Staley being involved with Epstein. And this is them trying to make sure that they keep their financials right. That is all this is. Staley has the support of Barclays' board to stay on for another 2 years, according to the Telegraph. Well, I don't know about that. I mean, maybe a portion of the board, but I know for a fact that it's not all around the way everybody agreeing. There are several people who understand what's coming down the pipe. There are several people who understand this is going to affect them very, very badly in the long run. Sure, it would hurt right now to get rid of Staley, right? It would look bad. It would suck. You'd probably lose some investors. But at the end of the day, it would help you moving forward. See, they're going to reap the rewards now, but they're going to pay the price later. There is no doubt. Especially, can you imagine if Jess Staley gets caught up in the criminal portion of this investigation, if it goes RICO, and his financial ties with Epstein are put on blast? Can you imagine how bad that's going to look for Barclays? CEO indicted under RICO for connections to Jeffrey Epstein. So my humble suggestion to Barclays is to be proactive here. Get rid of this guy, do the right thing, and bring somebody else in like Venkat. A spokesperson for Barclays declined to comment. Yeah, of course they did. Look, they're not going to go on the record here. All this information that we're getting is stuff that they put out through their mouthpieces, right? These are conditioned leaks. They plan these kind of leaks to the media because they want the narrative to move in their direction. And they want it to seem like everything is locked in. Everything is tight, prim, and proper up top. There's no hurdles. There's no speed bumps. And your money is in good hands. That's what they want you to believe. And they will bend over backwards to get you to believe that, even if they themselves do not. Epstein, who took his own life last year while awaiting trial on sex trafficking charges, allegedly, had been a key client of Staley's when he worked at U.S. investment banking giant J.P. Morgan. Yeah, look, Jess Staley had nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein financially, folks. Come on, that's just a fairy tale. What do you think, Jess Staley was involved in harboring Jeffrey Epstein's money? Pah, come on, no way. Jess Staley had no idea. He's just too stupid for that, I guess. A man who is the chief executive at Barclays is too stupid to understand that there was money laundering going on right under his nose. Yep, sure, I believe that. Barclays disclosed earlier this year that the Financial Conduct Authority and Bank of England's Prudential Regulation Authority were investigating Staley's characterization of his relationship with Epstein and the subsequent description of that relationship. So basically, they're investigating if he's lying or not, and it's obvious that he is lying. He acted like he had no sort of private relationship with Epstein when we know that's a lie. He was on the island. But wait! He had his wife with him. Okay, that's his excuse, but he was on the island. If you are not close to Epstein personally, why are you partaking in what his island has to offer? Why are you going to his island and hanging out with him there? I don't care if you're with your wife. I don't care if you're with Jesus Christ or the Pope. You should not be hanging out with a convicted pedophile, okay? Ever. There's no logical reason that I can think of for somebody to go and hang out with Jeffrey Epstein. And then, after that's all been aired out, after Barclays already knew that he was Jeffrey Epstein's number one go-to man at J.P. Morgan, they thought it would be a good idea to bring him over to Barclays. They never expected Epstein to get busted again. And if Trump didn't become president, there would have never been all of that spotlight on Jeffrey Epstein. Think about that. That's when all of this popped off, right? When Trump got elected, they started putting out the pictures of Trump with Epstein like they should have. And it really ratcheted up the heat on Epstein. So one of the things that happened when Trump was elected, the unintended consequences, I guess you should say, was his relationship with Epstein was put on blast. And it turned out that was the catalyst to get him arrested and to have the investigation start by Julie Brown and the Miami Herald. It's pretty crazy how that all occurred and how it all emerged, right? Because, again, I've talked about this a bunch of times. If it wasn't for Acosta being appointed and Trump being president, nobody would have even looked into this. Nobody really cared about these survivors. And it's crazy to think that Jess Staley thinks that when all of the chips fall down and the Jenga tower comes tumbling in, that he's going to be left smelling like roses. That is not going to occur. Okay? Jess Staley was Epstein's go-to guy. He was Epstein's number one man at J.P. Morgan. And we know that when J.P. Morgan and Jeffrey Epstein were in business, a good majority of these crimes were being committed. So yes, Jess Staley, you have some questions to answer. And no, we don't believe that the board truly supports you. Staley has admitted that he maintained contact with the disgraced financier, pedophile, for 7 years after his conviction, adding that he deeply regretted the relationship. Imagine that, huh? 7 years after the conviction, they're still palling around, they're still buddies, they're still friends. What do you think? When they sat around and talked, Staley never asked him about the conviction or getting in trouble in 2009? You don't talk to him about that? That's not one of the first things you say to your friend? I know if I had a friend who was convicted of sex crimes, I ever saw them again, the first thing I would say is, hey man, what the F is the deal? What did you do? But these people act like they don't do that. Like it's just not the polite thing to do. Well, I'll tell you what. Sometimes the polite thing to do isn't the right thing to do. Sometimes you have to run into the room with your fat yap running and call everybody out. F politeness when it comes to pedophiles, folks, okay? That's it. That's all. There's no politeness when it comes to people like this. There's no palling around or hanging out or associating. Not if you want to keep your name clear of it. And Jess Staley, well, that's not going to happen, sir. Staley said his contact with Epstein began to taper off and become much less frequent after he left J.P. Morgan in 2013, before ending totally in late 2015, the year he took over as chief executive of Barclays. Oh, well, isn't that convenient? So, let me get this straight. Your whole entire time at J.P. Morgan, you and him are thick as thieves, tight, good friends. Then, even afterwards, after the conviction for 7 years, you guys are great friends up until 2015. Then you get the Barclays job, and then miraculously your relationship ends? Nobody's buying that, okay? What you mean is your public relationship ended. You guys were still homies. Stop it. Having initially called for Staley's removal as chief executive in May, Bramson renewed his attack on the American last month. And I'll tell you what, I'm all for Bramson's motivations here, right? Look, at the end of the day, I'm not naive. I don't think Bramson really cares about the survivors. He's just another billionaire making moves. But an enemy of an enemy is a friend of mine. And if he's going to work to get Staley out and to get Staley tossed onto his ass into the unemployment line where he belongs, then I am all for it. And I support Mr. Bramson's attempts. Because at the end of the day, he's right. I would never put one single dollar with Barclays at this point. With Jess Staley involved? Sorry, no thank you. Furthermore, with everything we have learned with the Finson files and the Paradise Papers, etc., I don't put my money with corporate banks anymore. I've been using my local credit union for the past 4 or 5 years anyway, so there's zero chance that I want anything to do with any of these banks at all. I mean, I don't want to be beholden to any of these banksters. Being in debt is the worst thing possible. I refuse to ever be a slave to these people. I refuse to ever be in debt to these people. And I most certainly refuse to ever accept that Barclays didn't know about Staley's relationship with Epstein. In an email to Barclays shareholders, an advisor to Sherborne raised further questions over Staley's links to Epstein during his time at J.P. Morgan, highlighting a subpoena issued to the U.S. bank over its dealings with the convicted sex offender. Now remember, J.P. Morgan is caught up in the subpoena party down in the Virgin Islands. Just another one of these age-old institutions obviously involved in all sorts of financial BS. And the head of that group, Jess Staley, thinks he's going to walk away smelling like roses. Well, my advice? Think again. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI at protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All of the links that go with this episode can be found in the description box. And I've had some requests to add the PayPal link back to the descriptions, so I'll be doing that as well. All right, everybody, I will be back tomorrow, and we'll jump right back in and see what's what. Hope everybody has a great Monday.